things like that. This stuff matters. So I think it's cool.
Yeah.
It's corny. It's cringe. I think I would have been an awful actor in this video.
You were tuned in, locked and loaded to the Starting 502 Podcast, brought to you, as always, by the incomparable Mr. and Mrs. Bourbon. My name is Presley Meyer, your host with the most. We're coming to you live from the Kern's Korner studios. Jacob Lane alongside me. Jacob, do you think that your life will ever be as busy as my life is right now?
Yes. I feel like you're
like,
stepping
it is that busy.
Yeah, I wanted to tell you this nicely, but I'm very much aware of here's the difference between the two of us right now. Is you bought the house and you got married and did all that within 30 days, right? Like that's insanity. So you're kind of coming through the back end of that. But yeah. I've realized that my life is never going to not be as busy as it is now. Like this is the least busiest I'll ever be. I have a 7-year-old and a 3-year-old, right? And we do the park and we do schools and activities and all that. And then on the weekend, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But man, we never stop. So yes, life is busy, man.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, and you have the kids 24/7, which is
correct.
Like I was thinking about this today. I would almost rather, and I would probably regret saying this now that I'm thinking about it, but I'd almost rather have the kids all the time. Just because you don't have that change.
Yeah.
That transition, that first transition day is brutal. Absolutely brutal. Especially like the kids have been gone for four days now. 4. So yeah, when they come back the first night we get them from daycare, it's going to be brutal. Every single time.
You'll get through it.
Well, I'll be in Oklahoma, so Megan's going to be enjoying.
Megan will get through it. That's right. Mr. and Mrs. Bourbon white label, man, with her name on it. How about that? Happy wedding.
I like that right here.
I still look here. I'll give the audience a little bit of a sneak peek behind the wedding curtains. But Presley, as I mentioned, bought the house, and they've got 50 other things going at one time. This man can't just change one thing about his life ever. It's got to be everything, like all at once. But they did, what is very much in trend, which is, a cash fund for the house and, potentially to cover expenses and things like that, right? As you get older, the registries kind of become less important because you got the pans, right? You and Megan got the pans. You got
we got
the cooking utensils. Correct. Exactly. Right.
We got the Noah's Ark of houses. We need less.
That's right. That's right. Exactly my point. But so you did the cash fund, right? And here's what I told you. For those office watchers, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. The birdhouse is coming, man. The custom birdhouse. We didn't do cash. The custom birdhouse is coming your way soon.
We're waiting. And of course, immediately, as soon as we do that, we get like 15 messages like, I don't know. That's kind of,
trendy. It's very trendy, man.
I got more cringy.
Cringy? I was going to say edgy. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
I did a registry because I needed the pots and pans. Like really
90% of what we got we did a housewarming / wedding reception. Basically, we got married and then we kind of like worked our way over to the house, and there we had like 80 of our friends and family inside of our home that is meant for 4 people.
You should have done what like Starbucks and like what Blaze Pizza did to me. Like as people entered the home, like had just like a little, like a pad there where they like 15% tip, 18% tip, like to where you just got them at the door. You know what I'm saying? Just tip
so most of what we ended up getting was bourbon and
you got a lot of bourbon,
and that's what we asked for though.
That's fair.
What do we call that? It's like a stock the bar, basically.
Stock the bar, man. Stock the house, stock the bar, stock the fridge, stock the cupboard.
Yeah, I mean, when you're moving into a house with 2 dogs and 2 children, and you have pretty much everything that you could need besides money, the next best thing to ask for is alcohol.
A little bit of this, man. The good stuff, right?
Yeah, Mr. and Mrs. If you're listening to the podcast, Mr. and Mrs. Bourbon. Make sure, by the way, you check them out online at store.mrandmrsbourbon.com.
Yes, I also want to say this, okay?
Go ahead.
I noticed some people like tweeting to the State of Louisville account, and I've seen it on Instagram, asking like where the TBT bottles are. I just went up to the liquor bar in Middletown, and there's several of them. So if you're listening to this, I hope that's still the case. That was like a week ago, but there was a lot of bottles there. And I told Sean and the team over at Mr. and Mrs. Bourbon, this is the best part about Liquor Barn, right? This is a fantastic little plug for them here. But they reminded me that Russ was going to be there to sign that bottle if I wanted to come back for that. So I thought that was a nice little, little added sell for them. Good for them.
Yeah, I mean,
Go get your bottle.
It's a limited release, but it's something you can still get your hands on. And like we've said too, save the bottle, don't save the bourbon. I think that's the best way,
Or just buy two. Buy two.
Yeah, it's not okay. Yeah, and I'm not going to drive any other brands into the ground or anything like this, but it's not like Makers where they slap Tom Jurich on the bottle and you're like, I got this bottle of shit that they put Tom Jurich on. Sorry, that sounded mean. I got this bottle of just very okay to subpar bourbon here, but it also has Rick Pitino and his signature on there, so that's cool. No, this is the good stuff, okay? Like, this is bourbon that you're buying to drink, so enjoy it. Enjoy, the memories that you make while drinking it. Don't just put it on a shelf to get dirty and dusty. Drink the bourbon and then wash out the bottle and make it a decanter around the house. Make it
you could do what I did in high school and put water back into it and pretend it's still, well, not for bourbon because it's brown, but the vodka.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah. Oh yeah, and
that's a trick I bet many of our listeners did.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, every kid, all of my friends did that.
Yeah.
You put water back in the vodka bottle, and they'll never know. It's so strong.
They'll never know. Right.
And then you put it back in the freezer. No problem.
Yeah. Right. And then you're like, oh, this vodka's light. Anyways, there's some basketball stuff to talk about, right?
There is.
Is there? I think there is.
There should be. The main basketball subject of conversation is Louisville basketball just released this new video. And as predicted, I'm going to get out there and get ahead of it and say it's cringy.
Mm-hmm.
It is a little bit. And I'm okay with that. But I think you have some opinions on this, Jacob. So as far as what the video entailed, was this like a play off of a specific movie? Was like The Martian? Was it
I was wondering that because, it was a very specific setup and look. But I don't know. I really don't know.
Yeah. I mean, the reason I get into that, I mean, it was a play on sci-fi movies in general where they travel into space, Rick and Morty style, through a portal. Maybe it's a play on, it's like, it's a combination of a lot of stuff, I think. But there was a lot of work that went into this video, clearly. They have every player and coach involved. My favorite part of the whole video is Brian Cloman looking directly at the camera.
Next year, that part of the video is meme potential. The portal's open. So good.
He was the best actor in the whole thing. He just looks right at it and he goes, the portal is open.
He reminds me of like the bully in a Disney movie. Like I don't know what it is. The vibes of him are.
No, he's like the principal that sides with the bully in a Disney movie.
So good, man. Like his vibes in that video were fantastic.
Fantastic, dude. I mean, so there were a lot of things to take away. I thought Peyton Siva's acting,
great.
C+,
Yes. Yes, Luke was, it was okay. Luke, for being on TV, it was I would have expected the acting chops to be a little bit better, but he was great. Him and Peyton had very clear chemistry.
Yeah, but no, and I texted you this right away, Jacob. I was like, I love how our buddies who were like, look, let's be honest here. We sit around in our spare time and talk about like 18 to 22-year-olds playing basketball and football. Like, we are not the best judges of what is cool, okay? Like, we're married, we're kind of dorky, like, we're not the judges of cringe.
You're hurting my feelings a little bit, man.
You're less dorky than me, 100%.
That's correct.
But yeah, if you throw like a Matt McGavick out there,
I'll just say one of us used the phrase "mommy milkers" on Instagram today, and the other didn't. So you draw the conclusion on who does what here.
Yeah, and we don't have to tell you who that was either.
Right, exactly.
See, if somebody's listening, they're like 19 years old, they're like, "Mommy milkers," I can get down with that.
You think so, man? I don't know. I feel like mommy milkers is an instant turnoff. We'll find out. We're going to
Do you know how that?
check out the analytics of this video to find out where the audience jumped off. Like, oh, it's because Presley said mommy milkers.
You said mommy milkers at the 347 mark. It's over. No, I mean, do you know how that got popularized though? Mommy milkers.
I don't. And I
It was
don't,
like a huge. So it was just a huge thing when Ilana Vaintrub, who's the AT&T girl,
oh, okay.
she
Okay. Yeah.
she
All
got
right.
very
Yeah. I got,
popular and people started bullying her, and she had to like
yes.
hide her body on the commercials because she was getting harassed by people because of her. Anyways, yeah. So what do you what are your thoughts on the video? My thoughts are I expected it to be cringe. So
Yeah.
I enjoyed the fact that they put so much time and effort into just a little short video.
Yeah. I think at face value, like it's cool to see the internal department, the creative department, be able to pull something like that off. That's a big, from the staging at the Yum Center to the every detail in the call center, the ACC broadcast center with the anchor in the news station. Like all of it was a really cool concept, and I think overall the message of it is what the big takeaway is Pat being able to go out with his staff and land 13 new players, right? Like it's very clear to me that's the message of what he's trying to communicate. And I think that the means of doing so is fine. But with that has to come the understanding of like context of where you are as a university right now in terms of the national landscape and understanding like how this might look. Now, I think you're fine with it because Pat Kelsey has a very intense personality. He is who he is. He does not hide it one bit. And I think that that's what you see in this video with him. But I think there's also going to be people who cut parts of the clips of that video
Oh, I'm sure.
and share it against Pat Kelsey in every way possible when Louisville loses. Every fan base is going to print that out and put all that stuff on signs and in show notes or on fan the student section notes. So it's cool. It's very cringe. It's very corny. My thing is, you know I get again the message they're trying to send, and what one of the things, not to kind of steal your thunder here, but you mentioned to me when we were talking about this earlier was it gives the players a chance to kind of show themselves and
Right.
really kind of brand themselves. In this video, not so much. They're just kind of walking. Like was there players anywhere else in the video that maybe I don't know their faces well
Yeah,
enough?
I went back and tried to watch and just see like, is there anybody I don't recognize? Like, is anybody an extra? Are they players? Like, what? I don't think so. But what I think may happen is there could be other plays off of this. Like,
Yeah,
this might not be the
right.
end
Probably
of.
not the end. Yes,
Right.
that's a good point. So my thing is like if you're trying to really push the players and show them off, which really in this case it's more like the coaching staff that you're trying to show off. I think it's gonna just come across as really corny, and the delivery is gonna be off. But I think that for my thing is like in the grand scheme of things, you ask what's the alternative? How do you what
Right.
content should they be making? And I can't say that they shouldn't be making this. I think it's totally fine. Off-season content's going to get a lot of eyeballs, a lot of clicks. It's probably going to be things that the creative team can submit for creative awards and for, PR recognition as a athletic department and a media team. Like I'm very understanding of that world based off of just what I do for a living and how valuable some of those PR pushes can be for your teams and things, right? So all of that holds value. But if you're trying to really show off the players to make them more attractive for NIL and to get them more in the faces of the public, to me, I personally get more out of the, in practice videos that they've produced,
Oh, sure.
whatever
Yeah.
that the name of the one that they just put out on YouTube,
Hmm.
where, Coach Cassidy is walking them through, the day to day. I think being able to see those interviews and the players talking about the things like that, and then combining it with some of the fun, light social content that you see where, players will walk up to what looks like a pre-positioned camera with some type of prompt on it and they're answering it or doing more, long form interview content where the players are more comfortable. I think that really is what lends itself more to what you were saying in terms of
Right.
their acting chops and brandability. But I think for what this is, it's fine. It's just very cringy and very corny. And if you're okay with that, then that's great. And if it
Yeah.
bothers you, like I saw people on social that hate it, then that's fine. Like,
Yeah.
it is what it is. At the end of the day, it's not going to decide any number of victories. The takes of oh, they wasted this much time in practice and they could have been out recruiting. Like, look, there's so much time available outside of practice based off of like the light schedules they have right now. Like, stop. Like, these guys are not prioritizing, and gals in that creative department are not pushing them to prioritize this over other things that are more pressing. But it is what it is. I just think, in my personal opinion, I think there's better ways to show off the players than like the Top Gun thing with Louisville football last year, where Ashton is, showing his hair and Jack's got the mustache, but there's really nothing, there's no substance to them in that. So that's my only thing.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's a 5-step process, really, Jacob. Step 1, begin to analyze the position that you're in. Step 2, 3, and 4, those are confidential. Step 5, reap the rewards of said filing and stapling. If you want parts 2, 3, and 4, Lottie Stockwell, Dana Brown, you have my number. Give me a call.
Right. Exactly. Right. No, I need you to give me all 5 parts right now. Why would I do that?
Yeah, no, I'm not going to give away all my answers. You're just going to steal my answers. Obviously. Hire me and Jacob. We'll get it taken care of. No, in all seriousness, though, I don't know what else you'd be expecting. Like, when you start seeing the branding and stuff come out in social media. Cardinal Commitment was the name of the initial
Cardinal
video
Commitment.
that came out. Looks like it's going to be a multi-parter. They're going to go
for the phone being out.
Oh, no, you're fine.
I got to do better with, like, I forget the camera's lower now, so you can see my hands and all my stuff on my desk.
Why don't you lower your camera? Is it just a better shot?
Better shot. Get the barrel in the back.
Yeah.
Get the Mr. and Mrs.
Right.
I don't know, man. Anyway, sorry. Go on.
No, you're totally fine. I mean, so Cardinal, what do we call it? Cardinal Commitment?
Cardinal Commitment,
was the, part 1. Looks like we're going to have, one with like Coach Foy and one with Coach Kloman and one with, like
Coach Hamilton, I noticed they've got, some of their, director of basketball ops. I think Mitch Johnson might have been in there. There's a couple of other, I cannot pronounce his last name, but Jermaine Yukugabo. I know that is terribly wrong, but he does a lot of their, if I'm not mistaken, he did a lot of their like player development at College of Charleston and came over with them to join the staff.
Yeah. Coach U.
Coach U. There we go. I love that, man. Thank you. See, resourceful.
Yeah. See, think smart, work smarter, not harder or something. Work harder, not smarter. Something. Anyways, no. So, I mean, I thought that those were very well done. And I thought that there was a lot to take away from those videos. I love the way that the coaches speak to the players. I like that it's very obvious that there's a lot of teaching going on in these videos. Yeah. I know it sounds silly. And that's not to say that like Kenny Payne or Chris Mack or their staffs were not coaching. Clearly,
Oh, Chris Mack, we saw a ton of this when he was here. This was the content they specialized in. Do you remember they did several years? They did the off-season videos with interviews that were like the one-on-one type deal.
Yeah, they did like going to the lake, going to paintball, like whatever it was.
Exactly.
So yeah, they absolutely allowed a lot of people behind the scenes. Not something you saw at all with Kenny Payne. Like, I mean, props to Corey and their team. That was Corey Aldridge, right? That was the kind of the head guy, and part of the social branding. I know that they got a lot of grief after the game winner where it was
we
like
practice this.
Yeah, it looked like the sloppiest play of all time, game winner against UMBC. But I mean, they turned like shit into gold while they were there. But I think the one thing to keep in mind with U of L on social media, Louisville basketball was like one of the last Power 5, maybe the last Power 5 program to like actually have an established social media presence. When Rick Pitino was here, he did not like having, they didn't do anything like this, right?
This is blog. That's what we got.
Yeah. And I think that his mindset behind that was like, nobody gives a shit about this stuff. They care if we win. And so that's what he rolled with. But then you look at like Kentucky or Duke or North Carolina, and they have like 1.5, 2 million followers on Twitter. Louisville has 91,000, and that has grown significantly since Pat Kelsey got here. Like, Pat Kelsey has almost as many followers on Twitter as the Louisville basketball account does. That's like Percy Miller had like what 600,000 followers on Instagram, something like that, and Louisville basketball has like less than 100,000. Like that's just kind of taking into account what the social growth is for Louisville basketball. And so when you take that into consideration, clearly they're putting a lot of time and effort and, budgeting out some money to kind of
Do
get
things
cool
like
stuff
this.
like this done.
Yeah. Because again,
that's not to say necessarily that really means anything, but I
it
think when
doesn't.
you're in an era when you're trying to have a revival, when you're trying to have as much positive social interaction and social growth as possible, you have to do some sort of stuff like this, and that's why I'm just like, to me, it's not that cringy, just because of who Pat Kelsey is, what this looks like for this program. So I don't know. Do you have something to say about that?
No, sorry. We might be getting Liam's debut on the show here in just a second. I'm just
Oh
going to
yeah,
give
tell
you
him
a
to come
brief
over
warning.
here. Yeah,
But no,
I'm looking out the window right now. My wonderful neighbor Mike, who came over last night at 1:30 in the morning to let me know that my garage door was open. Just a beautiful neighbor, beautiful human being. He is currently weed eating my grass.
there you
So
go. That you need to keep that guy around. Shout out to neighbor Mike, man. We
yeah,
need
shout out
Mike
neighbor
around.
Mike. I hope he makes more appearances because he is just salt of the earth.
Yeah, we need more neighbors like that, to be honest with you. But I agree with what you're saying. I think there's a lot of different kind of bigger narratives to come from this. Like there is no discussion to be had around like should they have done this video? Should they not have? Like who cares? That's not like this video's the purpose that it was intended to serve. It's serving. It's circulating. They're being talked about. Again, the other
Right.
side of this is the creative department being able to pull things off. And as Presley just indicated, Lottie and team has invested resources into growing that department to the fact of across the country. You look at how departments have had to let members of the athletic department and creative teams go. There was all those furloughs during COVID. So for Louisville to be able to pull stuff off like this, it really tells you the value that they've placed in media and social media and that power to harness and really capture the fan base and captivate an audience being talked about and things of that nature. But I think the other thing to kind of, just to kind of earmark here, if we're kind of just really breaking this down and talking about, high level, like what this can be, is that Pat Kelsey, and we've known this about him, is that he will embrace being a part of the conversation, of being, the team that's being talked about, doing things that are a little outside of the box that capture attention and really put eyes on them and people talking about them. Because, while I do think that his personality and the way he's really talking about Cardinal basketball, like I don't want to say it's not calculated in the terms of like, I got to say this that many times, but I think he's like leaning into really like the fan base and the jargon and the way that we speak and the things we care about to capture us and to put this net out to say, please come back. Like, I get it. We want to do the things that you wanted all along. Just give us a shot. And I think, for him, he's got to win. We're going to say that until the first game of the season. He's got to win. He's got to win. He's got to win. He's got to win. But this stuff matters when you are trying to build your brand as a coach, build your brand as a team, reestablish the brand, as Reese Gaines said this past week on the show. Things like that. This stuff matters. So I think it's cool.
Yeah.
It's corny. It's cringe. I think I would have been an awful actor in this video. Please don't lump me into being an actor in this video. If you want to go act in this, all power to you. I could have been a guy who just pushed the lever. I don't know. I have cool tattoos on my arms. Maybe that would have been. I could have pushed it like this way, so like the full Skyline showed or something. But other than that, man, it's just fun off-season content type stuff, and I'm excited. But we got real basketball coming, and this is the prelude to all of that. Like this is strategical in nature, folks. Like the way that this is all planned on how it's released and how it's distributed, it's strategical. Like it's to get the crowd hyped. It has a purpose, but there's going to be more, as they've alluded to lead up to the fact that at the end of this month, we have live basketball.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's, I want to get into that, but I want to get in. I mean, we really haven't even talked. We really haven't dove into what the roster is going to look like.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, we've touched on it. We've gone over each individual player as they have been introduced, but now that the roster is kind of complete, we have roster numbers, we have heights and weights, we have bios. Like we're really starting to feel like this is a team coming together now, which is exciting. First of all, the numbers on the roster. Anything stand out to you? I like that it went completely over everybody's head. That I said Noah Waterman.
Yeah, I thought that was a great joke. I thought it was a great joke.
It was a fantastically executed joke.
That would make him 31 years old. That's the joke, right? I got that correct? Okay, thank you. I want to make sure. I thought that was the joke.
Immediately, when you and I see it, we're both born in 93.
Correct.
So immediately we're like, oh, shit.
He's 31
Is
years
Noah
old.
Waterman that old? And then we're like, no, okay, he was born in like 2000 or something. But
wasn't it you earlier, or maybe it wasn't? I think it was you that accidentally tweeted that a Louisville offensive lineman was 38 years old or something like that because you got his Google profile. Okay, that's right. I couldn't remember what that was.
If you look up Jonathan Mendoza,
he's like a wrestler, right? Like a WWE wrestler.
Jonathan Mendoza is also old. Don't get me wrong. He's like
25.
He's like Waterman age. He's 24, 25.
Correct.
Which is old for a college athlete, considering, I mean, how old is, I don't know, how old is Joel Embiid?
I don't know, but like Jason Tatum is like 20, 23, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's weird that I get like chills down my body when you say Jason Tatum. See, that's cringe. See, that's what, I think that's the difference. You got to say cringe. Like, I think it's like, Jason Tatum, after they won the championship, was cringe.
Oh, yeah, that was just a copycat tour. Yeah, that's all it was. Like, just trying to hit the highlights for the content.
Like, what's the guy's name from Duke? Jared McCain.
Yes, Jared McCain.
His TikToks are less cringe than
I don't
Jason
mind his
Tatum's.
TikToks, man. And to be honest with you, I don't mind Jared. No, I don't mind Jared McCain's TikToks. He's a good dancer.
Sure. Let's not get into that. Anyways,
yeah, we were really getting off the rails here.
No Waterman being 93 is going to be a sight to behold. I love it.
I need to pull the graphic up, to be honest with you. I've forgotten. I do think there was some interesting numbers in there that haven't been worn recently. And then
Smith, the second number 6 in school history. Case and Pryor, number 7.
Yeah.
Tony Roots, number 9. Those are some.
Who was the last number 9? I mean, I'm probably missing somebody, trying to think through this on the fly.
So I don't know if you remember this. They changed the numbers that you can have on your jersey like 2 years ago. So nobody has worn anything that ends with a 6 through 9.
Okay.
And nobody's worn anything that started with a 6 through 9.
Okay.
Since like the 50s or 60s.
Okay. I got you. This is making sense now.
In college basketball, you could only wear, and they just added 0 recently. So you could only wear 1 through 5, 10 through 15, 20 through 25, 30 through 35, 40 through 45, 50 through 55.
That's right. Because it's a finger thing.
Right. It's a finger thing. Yeah. Save that for the mixtape. So officials apparently figured out that, they use two fingers in the NBA. Why can't we?
Yeah.
Was there like, see, I want to know, I understand the confusion, but there's so many fucking people at that scorer's table that they can't figure out if it's number 7 or number 25. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like,
I will here. So yes, that bingo, right? There's 1,000 screens they could also watch the replay on. But like when I used to play in men's league, you would have to once a year stay and do the scoreboard to help like the league function. And that was the most like pressure I've ever felt, is trying to keep up with who the fouls are against. You're some random dude.
Yeah. Yes, correct. You're in the men's league drinking a beer at the scorer's table. Okay. There's a difference. Like, This is someone who gets paid to do this.
I can lean over to the ref like, hey, what was his number again? The guy at the scorer's table can't do that. Right. Yeah, so it makes sense. The finger thing totally makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, and I was thinking maybe there's somebody that came along. There's a prolific ref who was doing a great job, but he had one hand. And
or there was a great 6-finger ref who was so good that they're like, you know what? We can make something to attach to most referees' hands to give them a 6-finger, and then we're good to go. We're ready to go. That type of thing. No, but the numbers.
The no-handed ref and the 6-finger ref. I love that.
93 is a great number. There's a lot of 90s in the NBA. 77, 70s. Like Andrea Bargnani, I think started his career after the number 1 pick, wore 77, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, Luka Doncic wears 77." I don't know, stuff like that's cool to me. But I think the big narratives are with this team, like as it's the completion and the roster is set, is the fact that you have, in my opinion, and we're gonna, hopefully talk about this, if not today, but at another point in the offseason, what I believe to be a top 5 roster in the ACC and a very winnable year with a team full of hungry, driven winners that want to win and prove that they can be the group that gets this team back. I think when you start to combine all those things, wow, there is a lot of uphill battles to really cross here and see the team come together. Do they have all the things they need? Do they have enough centers? Whatever the case is Ali Khalifa going to play? Why is he not wearing a knee brace in any of the videos and pictures they show of him?
Right. Yeah.
I don't see any scars on his knees. No, but I think this team is very complete. And look, let's just get into this real quick. I did I did Cardinal Connect this week for the 502 Circle, which is their member only webinars, which really gives them access to coaches and players in a way that's never been done before. It's fascinating to me. Very fortunate that I was given the opportunity to participate in that. Even just watching would have been great, right? But I got to talk, and really introduce the fan base in a more intimate way to Chucky Hepburn. And we talked a lot about this offseason, and, we talked a lot about the roster and the fit. And there were so many different things to take away from that conversation. One of them being is that he said that they felt like they've played together for years, and it's only been a month for this team. He, just applauded the depth, the number of guys, different things, like all the different things, the system itself, the strength and conditioning coaches. He talked about, the fit, the shooting, like all these things, right, at a very, very high level. But one of the things that he talked about that I found to be really interesting, these little nuances that get you excited. A guy like him, he said, I've never had a lob threat before like James Scott. I can't wait. Like, it's going to just be lobs all day long. Paraphrasing. It wasn't that exact quote, but, to that extent. And then, the things like, in drills, they're really pushing each other. There is no days off, no plays off, no reps off. And as cliche as that is, like, I believe him. Like, I believe that atmosphere, that culture is being established. And this group is made up of guys that are mostly 4-year, 5-year, 6-year seniors who have played in the NCAA tournament, who have won conference championship games. Listen to this stat, okay? Shout out to Paige McCormick of the 502 Circle for this one. She pulled this stat and provided this to me pre-show before I did this. Chucky Hepburn is the first freshman to start a game at Wisconsin, the first game of the season, a season opener, as a true freshman since 2001, okay? And think about the success that team has had with Bo Ryan to, the change of the guard, if you will, there. They've had a ton of NBA players. They went to the national championship with Sam Decker and Frank Kaminsky and a ton of great role players. And Chucky Hepburn is in the name of the echelon of the great role players and solid players at Wisconsin. Started every game of his career. Like, that is going to matter when it comes to winning games. And you could just sense it. They are ready to go. Like that's why the games at the end of this month and TBT are like, and then just like, it's just the perfect combination of getting everything back headed towards the right direction.
Yeah. I want to know if Chucky Hepburn and Fat.
Yes. I always want to add an S, but that's Fats Russell. This is Fat.
Exactly.
It just feels not very nice. Like, hey, Fat. You can't yell that, you can't yell that often. So
have Chucky and Fat made amends after the NCAA tournament?
You know what? I was thinking about that in the middle of a line of questioning. And I, again, was sitting in a situation where I didn't want to be on my phone, my computer. So I didn't Google it, and I didn't want to ask and be wrong, but I wanted to ask that question. That's a tough one.
Couldn't remember 100% if they actually played each other or
I just couldn't remember. I thought they did. I was fairly certain they did because I picked James Madison to beat them because they were loaded, man. That team was fantastic.
They were very good.
Yeah. So, but this team, like the comment that he made about them feeling like they've been playing together for like a year or for longer, and they just got here a month ago. That stuff is, with this video and just all this stuff, man, like it gets you really excited when, years past, like you felt excited, like Kenny Payne's first year, like, the roster had pieces and thought maybe they could be competitive. But like, this is a situation where I was literally just telling my wife this yesterday, and I mean this. This is a team that if you told me they made it to the second round or the second weekend of the NCAA tournament with this build, this ACC the landscape of college basketball right now, what they're not truly being, but maybe like a handful of great teams. I mean, look at who's played the national championship the last couple of years, who's made it to
Right.
Final Fours. Teams have flipped rosters and gotten right back into it. I truly believe this is a Sweet 16 caliber of team. A lot of things got to come together, but like, it's incredible. Yes.
I have a hot take moment.
Okay, let's see it. The black and
Well,
white camera is such a smooth transition here, man. I
this
love
is
this.
Presley's fast fact of the night. Louisville basketball has 14, if you include walk-ons. There are 14 players that have played at least 3 years in college basketball, including 4 players who have played at least 5 years in college basketball. And now we return to the regular camera.
If you could ever click it back over. This is going to be so fun for our production team trying to figure out how to edit this correctly now that you're stuck in black and white in the middle of the show. But no,
okay,
this
never back.
There we go.
So that's something to take into consideration. So you have
and now
Korner.
you've lost your mic. Now your mic is disconnected, and you're just talking into the laptop speaker.
Oh shit!
Yeah, which is fine. You figure that out. But you talk about some of the younger guys and guys that haven't played that many years of college basketball, and Connie Ruth, obviously. But he also mentioned Connie Ruth as a guy who's stuck out and a guy who's really held his own and is ready to at least be competitive for playing time. Not really sure, didn't dive into what roles look like, but all of that has to have fans in a place right now where they are just ready to pop, right? Like I forget the name of the actor's name, but the gif or the meme where he's like, I'm about to bust. Like that's all of Louisville fans right now waiting for basketball.
Yeah.
And like the TBT is going to be, excuse my French here, but like the pre-bust to what is going to be the bust come late July and early August.
Yeah.
When they play live basketball, this team plays live basketball.
And here's one more stat for you. I'm sorry, I've totally messed this up. 5th and 6th year players, there's 7 of those guys on this team. So there's basically 7 guys that are 23 or older. Like they're the age of like the Atlanta Hawks, like average age. So
like the Washington Wizards or the Detroit Pistons. Yes. And in college basketball, that's how you win right now. That is how you win. Like UConn, they were one of the ways that you can win, in terms of having older players, younger players, and a mix of all of it. Like I would love to continue to see that mix evolve for Louisville. But like, if you look at years past, it's always been teams, and even UConn, Cam Spencer, graduate guards, experienced big men, experienced wings. So that stuff matters in Louisville. Check. You know what I mean?
James Scott and Connie Roos are the only players that aren't junior, senior, 5th year, or 6th year.
Yes, and then if you want to throw in terms of Division I, Kobe Rogers in there, he only has played one
that's
year
true.
of Division I, but still, as a national champion at Nova Southeastern at the D2 level, who is a powerhouse. So like a proven winner, right? First year, towards the end of the season, is averaging double figures before he goes down, unfortunately, in the Alabama game. So like that stuff all, just from a roster management standpoint, just is awesome to see in a year where, again, I want to reemphasize this. We talked about this on the Mike Rutherford show when I filled in a couple weeks ago. The ACC is wide open. There are really only 2 teams that are going to be talked about from the ACC. I'm not sure that either one of them. I think one is a giant, like an absolute giant, and that's Duke. But I think North Carolina is going to be mentioned with Duke because, again, what they've done the last couple of years. They have RJ Davis back. But outside of those 2, you tell me who the next team in line is, and then I could make the argument of why it should and could be Louisville.
It could be. It could
crazy
be any
is that?
number of teams. There's really a kind of a log jam there, if you will, of 3 through 9, maybe. I mean, you could argue NC
definitely
State.
3 through 6. I will tell you, it's not that deep yet of a league. It's unfortunately, it's just not, and I don't know if it'll ever get there. If it'll get back to that.
It's so inconsistent with the coaching carousel and with, Pitt last year is a perfect example, or like Wake Forest. Like Wake Forest has such good guards and such a great coach, but they just can't seem to get the job done when it matters the most. Like they've been right there. On the bubble 2 years in a row. Pitt brings in these great players. I mean, look at Henson from Pitt, just tearing it up already in the NBA.
In the summer, great signing.
And great signing from them.
Like, here's the thing. I talked about this again on the Mike Rutherford show. Pat could be a potential ACC Player of the Year candidate. Like he could, if you told me at the end of the year that he won that award, I wouldn't be shocked. Now, I mean, that would mean that Louisville is likely a top 3 team, which is where we're talking about maybe their ceiling being.
Right.
And obviously, there's a lot of other pieces around him, but like you could also convince me that Javon Hadley might be all defensive team, or that Chucky Hepburn or Korn Johnson could be the 6th man of the year. Like Louisville has all of that. And again, when you talk about the rest of these teams, when I throw out names like Wake Forest, who lost Andrew Carr, their big man, to Kentucky. When I throw out Miami, who lost Norchad Omer to Baylor, some of these schools were not necessarily gutted, but they lost their stars. And while, of course, Louisville is 13 in, 13 out, Louisville replaced the 13 top to bottom with better players. And Duke is bringing in a bunch of young freshmen. Now, look, I don't know if you saw the video today. Cooper Flagg.
He's dirty.
He's playing at the USA select team against the NBA's best of the best. So Duke is going to be a problem. But Louisville could be right up there with, again, it all goes back to this video and the whole concept of this show tonight. And that's the roster construction and the job that they did identifying players who fit what they did in a plug and play manner, not in the Satterfield approach, which is let's just go get a bunch of guys that we're familiar with. There is a little bit of that, but then there's this ability to go out and get meaningful impact players. And that's going to be huge for them because, again, you throw out a team like Duke, right? And you talk about the matchups and you talk about how they've got 2 5-star centers coming in and they've got a 7-footer and then they've got Cooper Flagg who can play the 2 through 4 and he's 6'9", 6'10", and he can handle the ball. What's Louisville going to do?
Right.
I mean, I'm going to throw Kason Pryor at him. I'm going to throw Javon Hadley at him. I'm going to throw, Fat at him. I might, we're not going to play zone because that's not really what they do. We're going to man them up and we're going to pressure him. We're going to throw bodies at him. And so this is a very long-winded takeover of your show way of saying, like, I'm having a hard time finding where Louisville on paper, now again, this is all on paper, isn't going to be ready to go and do a lot of these things that will put them in these places we're talking about.
Right. And, going back, I want to touch on that as well, but going back just to the schedule thing real fast, I think that the coaching staff and those around the program might see the writing on the wall that the ACC could be weak this year. It could be a team where they get 6-7 teams in this past year, which is, I think that's a pretty down year for the ACC.
Yeah, but they had what, 2 Final Four teams or 2 Elite Eight teams, right? So, I mean, North Carolina State made up for that and really helped kind of put some juice into the sales of the ACC. But it's a down league for sure.
I think they're seeing, though, I mean, like, and again, this is not to disparage a certain team versus another, but say it's Boston College, Pittsburgh, Notre Dame, Virginia Tech, and Florida State, right? Like those teams could all be like quad 3 wins, or even worse, a quad 3 loss.
Yeah,
that's not out of the realm of possibility. Now, could any of those teams, make a run towards, the NIT or NCAA bubble? Maybe.
Yeah.
But
like an NC State
by the same token, they could also suck.
Right.
I mean, Florida State doesn't look like they're doing anything down there. Like there's just teams. There's teams in this conference that are not going to be.
Oh gosh, man,
close to the NCAA tournament conversation.
Here's how I have this conference tiered. Like it's tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and then it's tier trash, and then it's tier awful. And there are 4
and
teams.
Awful is worse than trash.
Correct. Yes. Okay. I'm going to say awful is the worst. Like if somebody says you're trash, like that's subjective. But if I say you're awful, now we're really talking personal. And to me, Georgia Tech, Florida State, Boston College, and Stanford all are in that bottom tier trash and tier awful.
I keep forgetting about dude,
Stanford might be the worst team in power, but the Power 4 now.
Yeah.
And they might be the worst team in Power 4 basketball.
I mean, you're going to have. I mean, does SMU have anything coming in? Is Cal?
Yes, SMU is solid. Cal is going to be a team that's going to be very competitive. I have it in that tier 3 is where teams like Wake Forest, Syracuse, Cal, Pittsburgh, Virginia Tech, SMU, Virginia, and Clemson live. Like you tell me that any one of those teams is awful, and then you also tell me that any one of those teams could make the NCAA tournament and go to
Sure.
the Sweet 16, I'd say, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then that tier 3 stage is where teams like North Carolina, Louisville, Miami, and NC State, in my opinion, live. And then you have the tier 1, which is just Duke by themselves. Like
that's tier 2 is the one you just listed. Sorry, you said North
Yeah.
Carolina, Louisville. Okay,
Yeah,
gotcha.
yeah. Tier 2 is that North Carolina, and this is just the Jacob Lane rankings of tiers, right? This is
No, I
not
like that.
by any means, but this is just how I see the teams based off of roster makeup. And to go back to Stanford, they're so bad this year that they literally have a kid who is transferring in from Virginia, not basketball though. He's transferring in from the lacrosse team, and he's going to play basketball in his final season. Pull a Greg Paulus in basketball, if you will. So
yeah, a reverse of Greg Paulus, right?
Yeah, Greg Paulus went from playing basketball at Duke and then went to play quarterback at Syracuse. So he went.
That's
from
what
football.
It was. Okay.
Yeah. So, but in a similar approach of switching sports. But yeah, Stanford's awful, and this conference could be like any of those teams in the tier 3. Like again, I mentioned. Any of them, like I'm not sure Wake Forest has enough pieces to be a tournament team, but they'll be dangerous, right? So that's really what defines them. And, again, one of the things that's going to be really interesting is nationally. We talked about this, some with Jake and a little bit. You all talked on this once the roster is kind of filling out. What will the national perspective be on Louisville? I think that's going to be like some national media, maybe some, other ACC programs might listen to me say Louisville would be a tier 2 team in that scenario and laugh at me.
Right.
I think there's going to be a big discrepancy in places of where you see Louisville kind of like, I think Louisville will be picked to finish somewhere between like 6 through 9 when the official rankings come out. But I don't. Yeah, right. Exactly. Dude, it's a 6-finger guy thing, right? No, I can do 6 fingers and 3 on the other, the referee out there. So, yeah, it's just going to be a really interesting year in the ACC. And to go back to what you're talking about with the schedule, again, on any night, Wake Forest, Boston College, a Notre Dame. Like I just realized I don't even have Notre Dame in my rankings. They would fall through in that. I think they would be like a tier 4 actually. To like, they're not trash. Like Braden Shrewsbury and Marcus Burton are going to be one of the best backcourts in the ACC.
Sure.
So, but anyways, I think that the makeup of the league doesn't necessarily lend itself to the scheduling. I just think that the way that they see it is, if you're going to make the NCAA tournament from the ACC, where maybe you're only getting 5 teams in, what might tip the scale on being that 5th team if you're on the bubble, or what might, maybe have you higher up is if you go and you play these Tennessees and these Ole Misses and Kentuckys, and you're competitive, and maybe Louisville steals 2 or 3, and then they're really good tier 1 wins, right? But then they could also kind of be your safety net if you are competitive. And then at the end of the season, you're sitting in a spot where maybe NC State played Alcorn State and they have wins against, Jackson State and, the Northern Arizonas of the world, where Louisville played Tennessee or played Ole Miss and went to overtime or whatever the case is. So Louisville is going to really battle test themselves early. And with that roster, like the only thing really that you question is chemistry. And then, health, maybe rotation, foul trouble, turnovers, like those things early. And to kind of put a bow and kind of bring this conversation all back, that's where this trip to the Bahamas really becomes valuable to hit the ground running in October. Once you beat your 2 exhibition teams, Pat Kelsey, for the love of God, please. You beat your exhibition teams, and then you get into these games early where you have, I don't have the schedule in the way that it's kind of shaken out in front of me, but you go to the Bahamas in, around Thanksgiving, like the 3rd week of your season for the Atlantis. So gives Louisville the opportunity to really hit the ground running with these games against professional teams here in July and August, man.
Right. I mean, so there's a chance that Louisville plays 4 SEC teams in the non-conference this year. They host Ole Miss and Tennessee. We know this for sure. We know for sure they travel to UK, and they could play Oklahoma and Atlantis. And this is not. We're not talking about the Bahamas. We're talking about Atlantis.
Yes, right.
Different scenario there.
But still a very good quality team.
Right. Right. So they're going to have obviously some chances to kind of get their feet wet in the non-conference a little bit. I think what is it? Eastern Kentucky that they play.
Yep. Right.
So and then Bellarmine, obviously,
Yeah,
with Kern,
Morehead, right?
Morehead
They
State.
opened the season
Yeah.
with Morehead State, if I'm
A
not
lot of
mistaken.
local flavor.
Love it, man.
I think that's intentional.
I'm a firm believer in the battle for Kentucky. Like, I wish that they would do a tournament where it's, Kentucky, Louisville, Bellarmine, Morehead, Murray, all the teams in the state, Western, Eastern, and let everybody play. I think as college sports kind of like goes from this old model of regionalization to nationalization, where USC is traveling to, Rutgers twice a year in football and basketball, or whatever the case is. Like, maybe these tournaments, that tournament could start to present itself as an opportunity, as a way to schedule 5 games in state and eliminate a ton of your travel costs.
Right.
Anyway, that's a tangent, man.
No,
I could solve I could solve college
that.
basketball's problems.
That's something that every state should do. And the fact that Kentucky doesn't already do something like that, when you have so many quality basketball programs, like, yeah, granted, Eastern Kentucky is a team that Louisville and Kentucky should both beat by 30. Same with Morehead State. Same with Bellarmine. But regardless, all of those teams, for their level, for the conference that they play in, are very quality teams.
Yeah. Shout out to A.W. Hamilton. He's a great coach at Eastern Kentucky. They've had, some really good players in down years there over the years, but they've also been very competitive, and that'll be a fun game. I mean, they'll push Louisville. Their style of play is going to be, that Kevin Keats style of play, which is also that Rick Pitino style of play. Like, it's going to be interesting to see kind of how Louisville will battle a team like that and play some of the other teams that are going to be, I wouldn't be surprised if they find another, non-conference game or two against mid-major, low-major teams that have made the tournament, or have been in the conference tournament finals over the last couple of years, right? Like a school, this is not a team I think they've announced or is even on their schedule, but like a UMass Lowell, who made the tournament last year from one of the teams conferences up north. Those kind of teams are not, you shouldn't lose to them. They'll really push you, they'll play sound basketball as a low-major NCAA tournament team.
Right. So here's what the schedule looks like as of right now. So you open the season against Morehead State on November 4th. Tennessee at home is going to be your second game of the season on November 9th. Winthrop, which again is a nod to Pat Kelsey's old program previous to College of Charleston.
Yep.
Then they're going to be Battle for Atlantis. They'll play the November 27th, 28th, and 29th. And then the teams in the Battle for Atlantis, we don't know the first matchup yet, but that'll determine the next 2 matchups. But Arizona, Davidson, Gonzaga, Indiana, Oklahoma, Providence, and West Virginia. If you had to guess, who do you think Louisville would open with?
I think those are the teams in the Battle for Atlantis this year. Say those teams again to me.
Arizona. So we can do this by process of elimination. They will not.
They won't open with them. No.
Davidson.
Maybe.
Very possible. Gonzaga, I don't think so.
No, but Arizona will either open with Gonzaga or Davidson. I would say they're the king of the tournament. Yeah. I mean, in Gonzaga, Tommy Lloyd was the coach there. So as an assistant under Mark Few. So maybe they might do that for storylines.
Indiana.
Maybe. I could see it. Maybe.
Oklahoma.
I could see that's an interesting one. That's an interesting one. That's a really interesting one. They lost a lot to the portal. I also think that their head coach, Porter Moser, would have been a solid candidate in that list of coaches we talked about in the offseason.
Sure.
So those are a lot of good teams.
And then Providence and West Virginia. Sorry. I don't think it'll be West Virginia.
Why wouldn't it be West Virginia? That'd be fun. 2 teams completely rebuilt. You really don't know what you're getting out of either one. New coaches from mid-majors that have proven track records. Darren DeVries is the new coach there. They got Tucker DeVries, who is his son. By all accounts, was one of the top 5 transfers in the portal. I could see it. That would be a good matchup for Louisville. And there's that boy
Jay's not back, right? We know Jay.
I don't think so.
Do we know where he ended up?
I do not know where Jay Coons ended up at. I do not know. I've not seen anything.
So I think the 2 teams that we can definitively say that Louisville will not face in the first round are Arizona and Gonzaga. I'd say Indiana is the third least likely. So in my opinion, it's going to be Davidson, Providence, Oklahoma, or West Virginia.
Yeah.
Either way, they're going to play 3 of those 7 teams that I just listed.
Right. And if they
So
play a team like Davidson, that likely means that they've lost a game already.
yeah,
They're
yeah.
playing
So
in a loser's
the
bracket
the
type of
the
situation.
worst case scenario, and if you're just eyeballing this and just guessing, you're gonna have a schedule like Davidson, Providence, Oklahoma. Like I think that's like the worst case scenario. Best case scenario,
I think it would be
play
backwards. I would think it'd be backwards. You would open with Oklahoma,
right,
lose
right,
to
yeah,
them, then play Providence, and
mhm,
then lose. That would say you lost to them, and then you would end
right.
up in that 7th, 8th place game against the Davidson. So I don't
Yeah,
think that would happen though. I
yeah.
think with this team, you don't have to worry about
I
that.
think, there's a world where you could play like West Virginia, Indiana, Arizona,
That is like probably your ideal world,
right,
because that
or
means you're
Oklahoma,
Gonzaga,
Gonzaga, Arizona.
correct.
Like
Yeah.
there's a world where that happens too. But I think if you're seeding this tournament, if you're the tournament committee, and not to get too much off on a tangent on this, I know we got to wrap this up here. But I think if you're seeding it, you go Arizona 1, Gonzaga 2, Indiana 3, Louisville 4,
No, I
right?
would probably switch 2 and 3 there. Gonzaga is going to probably have a down season this year. In fact, I think they might
Okay.
have one of the worst rosters, just top to bottom, out of all the group of teams that you just mentioned there
That's
being in
why I
this
keep you
field.
around, because you're a freak of nature. The fact that you just know Gonzaga's roster right
Now,
now.
look, man, I'm pretty sure they bring Graham Ike back, their big man. And if that's the case, he's going to probably score like 30 points and get 15 boards a game. He was one of the best over bets on all of college basketball last year. I made a lot of money off of Graham. Shout out to Graham.
You're a freak of
They've
nature.
also got a guy coming back this year, and his first name is Steele. His name was Steele Venters. Well, which should be one of their better players. Yeah. Anyways,
I mean, Steel
if you're
versus Rain would be fantastic.
if you're seeding based off names, yeah, Steele and Rain get the first 2 teams for the first 2 seeds.
And
for
plus,
Louisville.
we have an Abubakar. So,
Oh yeah, you got to go with a boob. Yeah, for sure.
and then there's a lot of great names. This is a great name
Yeah.
game. Either way, so you got Morehead State, Tennessee. I think Tennessee, good chance that they're ranked to start the season.
Oh yeah, but hold on, let me look at that. Hold on, I've got their roster pulled up with all the guys they've got coming in. Tennessee's another team that had a really good portal run. They brought in Darlinston Dubar from Hofstra, who legitimately could be Dalton Connect again. Then you've got Igor Milicic from Charlotte, who's a really skilled big man who should be a starter for them. And then they brought in Chaz Lanier, beat Kentucky out for him from North Florida. Then they have a really, really talented guard named Bishop Boswell, who's a 4 or 5-star kid who should be very good for them. And then they bring back a ton of production too. They might, end up finding themselves with one of the better teams in the SEC next year.
That's gonna be a fantastic game. Like you're talking about, Louisville said they want to have 85% capacity for at least one game, right?
Something like that. The Ole Miss game will also be a lot of fun. Not only just because of they're a team that's going to be really good in the SEC too. They've got Dre Davis, obviously, joins the fold, who will be a fantastic fit playing for Chris Beard. Then they've got Sean Padula, who was one of the lead guards for Virginia Tech last season. So
he's fantastic.
Going to be a lot of really fun matchups early. But can I just make one more note on the Invitational or the Atlantis, and then we can kind of start to wrap this up here. Yeah. I think that is one of the more important stretches of the entire season, and will really set a baseline for one thing, and one thing that, when the grand scheme of things, defines your ability to win a championship. And that is, can you win multiple games in multiple days? That is in the NCAA tournament. You got to win 2, 2, and 2, right? I mean, every weekend you got to win. You got to stay alive. You got to win 2 games in a weekend. To win a conference tournament, you got to win 2, 3, 4 games in a row. That matters. And so for Louisville, against, top 50 teams in this tournament, they are going to test themselves and give themselves a baseline of how many games can we win in multiple days, and where do we stack up at the end of this, and how do we improve from now until March, when the NCAA tournament comes, to be able to do this every weekend.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, and you look at the Battle for Atlantis, man, those seasons have turned out very well for Louisville. Every year they played in Battle for Atlantis. 200013, obviously, was that the inaugural event?
Yeah, I think so. Yes.
It was either the first or second year, loaded field.
Yeah.
Louisville loses to Duke because Gorgie Zhang had a wrist injury.
Yes.
But they won they played 2 really quality games back when it was like just strict ballroom, like with black lights and like 100 people in there. And you know, when it was very in the very beginning stages, it was like, you know,
Yeah, I
great
think they.
field, but not quite what it is now.
I think they also went in 2015 as the year where they played Baylor, and I think they
Yeah.
like had a huge lead in that game and blew it,
That's
and then
exactly what I
lost
was going to
again the
say.
next day to
Mhm.
VCU, if I'm not mistaken. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
if do I have that right? My memory sometimes
See,
sucks, and
I
then
don't know
other
if it was
times I'm like, babe,
2015. So
yeah,
I was just looking it up. I will fact check that for you, but I believe that was a Donovan Mitchell team
I think
because
so
I think it
too.
was Donovan Mitchell versus Davian Mitchell. Do I remember that right? Or
No, 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 no. Those two were never in college at the same
yeah,
time.
the
Davian
Davian
Mitchell
Mitchell was when they
played
won the
the
championship. So that would have
championship.
been
Yeah,
2020.
yeah,
Um,
2021. So that would have been five
so
years later,
this
essentially,
had to
from
be
where we're at.
Patino's last year. So that
Might
would
have
have put
been.
us in 2000. I think it was 2016 then.
Was it
This
yeah, that's what I was thinking too, was the 2016
so
year.
Donovan Mitchell, Dangadell.
Yep.
Who else was on the team? Quentin
Was it?
Snyder.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
They had a lot of pros on that team. Jalen Johnson,
Oh yeah.
Mango.
There you go.
Yeah. So,
Quality
yeah.
squad. Anyways, yeah, Baylor was down like 23 with
Yeah.
like 10 minutes left and came back and won. That was freaking insane.
I'm fairly certain they had Torian Prince on that team,
Mhm.
and Jonathan Motley, if I'm not mistaken. Both of those guys played for
Yeah.
Baylor during that year. They were just monsters on the glass, like
So
just absolute.
that would have been Bettino's second to last season.
Well,
Lee and
2017 was the year he was
Lewis,
fired. So,
yeah, Lee and Lewis was his last season. So I think you're right, 2015.
2015. Okay.
And you know what, Keith, go back and fact check us and just like bleep all this out if we're wrong because we can only be right, obviously. That's how this works.
Yeah, we need one of the like at the bottom, that little disclaimer like Twitter gives you that's like, this is not correct.
Yeah.
Start
The
giving us
Twitter
like the
fact
community
checkers or
notes.
something. Or
Yeah.
Elon Musk is like getting fact checked by like some dude with 20 followers in his mom's basement, and he's like, "This actually didn't happen." Sorry.
Yeah.
Anyway, so if we dive into the end of the schedule here, so far we've discussed Louisville opens with Morehead State. They turn around and face Tennessee that same week, which again could be huge. I don't know if Louisville's gonna be top 25 to start the season. There's been some chatter about that, and maybe we can save that for the next show. But I think
that's
that
a good debate to have.
they're going to get votes at least for top 25 to start the season.
They might be like
Um,
29, 32, something like
Sure,
that.
sure.
Just again, because of that national perspective and the bias of the last 2 years.
Sure, absolutely. And then there's obviously the case of Pat Kelsey has
Never
never
done
coached a game on this
Yeah.
level, and most of the players have never played a game on this level or together. So there's going to be a lot of that. But again, you know, the rankings don't come out for a while, and you know, a lot of people are going to be watching these Bahamas games as well. So Morehead State, Tennessee, Winthrop, which again, like we said, Pat Kelsey's previous school. Not sure they have a super quality roster put together for this season. That should be, two of the first three games they should be expected to win. There's also going to be a game more than likely in between Tennessee and Winthrop. So you have Tennessee on November 9th, Winthrop on November 22nd. So I don't think they're going to have 13 days between games that early in the season. After that, we had the 4 Battle for Atlantis games that we talked about. Very good chance to, if you win your first game, play a really quality opponent, which again, it could be a fourth SEC opponent, could be Gonzaga, could be Arizona, could be, some really exciting matchups, or hell, Louisville could lose and Gonzaga could lose and they face Gonzaga in the second round. There's a lot of opportunities for cool stuff to happen there.
They could theoretically play like Indiana in a second game loss,
Sure.
right? I mean, that's the thing about this tournament is like so early in the season, you have 2 teams that have 13 new players on them. Who the hell knows, man?
Yeah. You really don't know. I mean, shit, you could slip up and have a terrible game and then turn around and have a great game. So who knows? Anyways, Ole Miss, December 3rd. So only really, I mean, so they get back on a Friday, or they finish on a Friday, right after Thanksgiving in the Battle for Atlantis. They come back home and host Ole Miss on December 3rd, which is a Tuesday. So literally, they'll probably get home like Saturday morning, have a day off, and then they go right back and host Ole Miss, who likely will be a top 25 or fringe top 25 team.
Yeah.
Then you go to Kentucky December 14th, but there is a gap there between December 3rd and December 14th. So those are the 2 gaps that we're looking at. There will be a game between Tennessee and Winthrop, and a game between Ole Miss and Kentucky, and then finally rounding out the
real quick. So the way that schedule shakes out, the way that I read that, then is you'll have that Ole Miss game. You'll probably turn around and have a quick, like that's on a Tuesday. You probably play that Saturday
game,
and then you are off for the next
Yeah.
6 days.
Yeah,
Before
or
Kentucky,
it could be a
the case
conference
is.
opener as well. They've
It
been
could
doing
be.
this thing lately.
That's right, because and there might even be the gap you mentioned earlier. That also could be a conference game. I mean, they played
Sure.
Miami in the season opener and Chris Mack's second to last year.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think they played an ACC team in either the first year of Kenny Payne's tenure or last year in the
Right.
first 10 games of the season. So they have been doing that more often. And again, that's fun. I'm here
Yeah,
for stacking some conference wins.
I like
early.
that becoming standard practice, especially now with having like what we have 18 teams now in the ACC.
Yeah,
18?
18 teams. Yeah,
18.
it's 18.
No,
Yeah.
well, last year they had 16. They had 19 teams.
No,
Because
I'm
you got to
pretty sure.
include Notre Dame,
Oh
right?
yeah, for basketball, yeah. I think that's
Is
right.
that
No,
right?
I'm sure. No, I'm fairly certain it's still. I think it's 18. I'm almost
18
positive it's
teams?
18.
Okay.
Again,
Either
we need
way.
the disclaimer, the community notes on this, and
Yeah,
that's also a sign that
exactly.
we need to
See?
get ourselves out of this show
Yeah,
because we're
producer
starting to go off
Keith.
the
Yeah,
rails.
just take care of us, will you? Anyways, Eastern Kentucky rounds out the conference or non-conference play on December 28th. Jacob, we probably won't have you back on before this happens. So, final thoughts as we head into Baha Mar. Scrimmages essentially. Preseason games. Anything that you're looking for, anything that you're expecting to see.
Yes. Okay. 3 quick things in Baja Mar. Number 1, does this team play the way that Chucky Hepburn described them from a chemistry standpoint? Have they retained as a team the information? Have those practices, have those drills, have those culminated in this team being able to be ahead of schedule? And what does that translate to? Number 2, there's 2 words, and then I'll just leave it. James Scott. Can't wait. Cannot wait. And then number 3 is going to really be the rotation of guards for me. How will he play? Now, of course, this is like a spring practice, so they're not going to, or the equivalent of a spring practice, they're not going to play their hand and show you everything. But is it Chucky and Javon at the 1 and 2? Is it Chucky and Terrence at the 1 and 2? Is it Chucky and Korner? Is it Chucky and Rain? What direction do they go? How do they fill in the minutes there with so many different guards? And then what lineups? Is it 3 guards? Is it 4 guards? I mean, this team has so many potential lineups with a guy like Fat being potentially able to play at a 4 because of, what they have in the other 3 guards and things like that. So those are the big things for me. I want to walk away saying, holy crap, James Scott. And then secondly, I want to walk away saying like, okay, this team, like, these are the dudes. Like, these guys get it. They get it. Yes.
Yeah. Was that it? You said second. You said you had 3 points, and then you said
I made all 3. No, James Scott was my second. Then third was the guard rotation. So
Jacob wants to walk away from this saying this team fucks pretty much.
Yeah. James Scott. That's it. Like
James Scott.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, when you look across the roster, right, you see Chucky Hepburn and James Scott. I think are 2 guys that are going to start. Like I have a hard time picturing it being anyone else. Maybe if Cason Pryor makes a case to be the starting center and James Scott comes off the bench, but I think that this staff knows what they have. Like this is a guy, again, hot take. We don't have enough time, but I would turn to the camera and say James Scott could be in Louisville for 1 year because he is good enough to make a significant jump at the Power 5 level, prove himself, realize that he's young enough. He's still only 18 years old.
Yeah.
To enter the NBA draft
that's a take, man. Wow.
So that's a hot take, but I mean, he's a guy that could have the averages 8 and 10 this year, 8 and 8 or whatever, and go to the league.
And he could also come off the bench and do that and still go to the league. There have been so many bigs over the years that come off the bench that don't play a ton of minutes.
Look at Donovan Mitchell. Look at Devin Booker. Look at freaking the guy from the UK this year. White dude.
Yeah.
Didn't start a game.
Yeah, I mean, those guys are not necessarily the same ilk of what you're saying because they were still stars at the college level. Where I'm thinking more of, for example, like a couple of years ago, Day'Ron Sharp in North Carolina was the backup to Armando Bacot, right? And as a first rounder, there's been a ton of examples of guys like that. I feel like they've all played at North Carolina too. But
they specialized in that.
If you can put together 15 minutes a game of very impressive film. And, obviously they want to see more than that. But at that young age, sometimes the coaches bring them on slow. NBA teams will be like, nah, all right, your college development is over. And now your NBA development begins because you've got the body, you've got the skills, and we will bring the best out of you when you no longer have to play school.
Yeah, Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
that's an interesting take. I hope that's the case, but I think that take could also flop massively.
Oh, sure.
Because he
Absolutely.
could get to the ACC level, and it's like, okay, he's a year away type of deal.
Sure.
But again, when you hear these guys talk about him and the coaching staff, that's why I say, like, I want to see James Scott, like, for myself. He is the number one player I am most intrigued by to see, just for Baha Mar, like, not for the whole season.
Sure.
Just for Baha Mar. Like, let me see the development and where he's at. And if getting here 16 days early paid off for him and all of those stories we've heard, it's like becoming James Scott is like a folklore at this point. I just want to see it with my own eyes.
Right. Okay. So my quick things that I'm looking for, and I'm sure Jake and I will get into this more as we approach Baha Mar as well. But I'm just going to go over a list of guys real fast. James Scott, Javon Hadley, Corin Johnson, Rain Smith, Kason Pryor, Connie Ruths, Kobe Rogers, probably not going to play this season.
Won't play, yeah. Definitely not down there. It's not if he does, man, it's a Rick Pitino type of injury.
No kidding. Cater Traore and Noah Waterman, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I just listed off, 7 guys?
Yeah.
Any of those guys could start. Any of those guys could be the 9th, or not the 9th guy, the 4th, 5th guy off the bench.
I think there are 2 guys that we know for sure will not start. Connie Ruth and Frank Anselm Ivy. I think those are the 2 guys that for a certain we know game one, we're rolling the ball out, they're not starting. Sure. Anyone else, like your point? Noah Waterman. If Noah Waterman is the starting 5 in game 1, I wouldn't be shocked.
No, wouldn't be shocked either. I wouldn't be happy about it, but I wouldn't be shocked.
I don't think it's ideal, but
Noah Waterman's he's my prove it guy. Like, he's like, prove to me that you're not who I think you are.
I didn't mention this earlier, but Chucky Hepburn also spoke very glowingly of Noah Waterman. Very glowing.
It's so weird. Like, I need to go back and look, I need to do my due diligence and watch a lot of BYU basketball, clearly. Because when I look at, I look at lots of numbers. And when I look at the numbers, he's the guy that stands out like a sore thumb as a guy that does not fit in with the rest of this roster. The rest of this roster is productive all over the place. And Noah Waterman is productive as a guy who is like he basically, he projects as like a European style big man in the league where he's huge, but he doesn't like getting close to the basket. He loves taking threes.
But he's the opposite of him and James Scott are the same thing, but opposite. Like, James Scott is only going to score 2 points.
Sure.
Noah Waterman says, well, 3 is greater than 2, so I'm only going to shoot 3s. Like, I respect
same size.
Correct. And look, not all bigs are made the same, man. Look at the 2 of us, buddy. We're big together. Bigs are a little different. You know what I mean? So it's a matter of what they decide that they need, because if you're getting at the 4, like, say, for example, Kason Pryor is not going to give you enough shooting. Well, maybe the flex there is you plug somebody in at the 4, like a Noah Waterman, and start James Scott at the 5, or whatever the case is. But Noah Waterman, you best believe, in any major game this season, assuming he is what everybody says he is, he will be on the floor in crunch moments because of his ability to score from 3. Like, that is extremely valuable in this style of play. The way that this team plays, again, you go back to that Nick Nurse influence. He's going to be important because he can shoot the ball just incredibly well from deep. And then like Traore, he's not going to score from 3. He's only going to score 2s and putbacks and free throws.
This staff has done a fantastic job of doing one thing that no other staff in school history and 99 out of 100 staffs across the country are not able to do, and that is assembling a roster of guys who absolutely have a chance to start, but only have 1 year to prove it. So what I mean by that is you have, 7 5th or 6th year seniors.
Yeah, that matters.
You have 14, including walk-ons. You have 14 guys that have played at least 3 years. And you got all these guys to come here and be here because they want to be a part of a championship team and a team that gets this turned around. Anyways, that's all we got for right now. We will be back very soon to talk a little bit more Baha Mar, but we want to get Jacob's takes on some things as well. Drink your Mr. and Mrs. Bourbon. Yeah, that's right. We got not that great, but we do have product placement now. That's right, baby.
Let's go. I know we got to work on our product placement, but hey, shout out to the gang, man.
That's fine. The fact that you can see and hear us is good enough for now. Drink your Mr. and Mrs. Bourbon. Store.mrandmrsbourbon.com. Until next time, Starting 502 Podcast. Get out of here. Go Cards.